everybody. Any we have additions or deletions to the agenda we want to get put on there? Okay. Lindsay, we do have the meeting minutes from the 19th. Anybody want to make a motion on those?
I'll do that.
Second. All in favor?
All right.
Minutes are good. So we're back to the out of jurisdiction waiver. And I think there's some general consensus that we keep some precedent of what we did previously with a female applicant that almost defer the request for now, recommend the level 2. But however, we did a caveat before of being able to start getting to some of those level 3 classes and almost resubmit for review, right? Or the sheriff mentioned earlier, if we set those guidelines out now, like this is what you need to do, and potentially not have to reconvene for the approval process later. I don't know if not reconvening is an option, or if almost by rule we would need to at least meet and give the approval. But yeah, I think I'm at the point now where I want to do a level 2 program.
I think what I was presenting as an idea was provide a out of jurisdiction waiver with the prescription being the full level 2 process. And then add on the additional prescription for the level 3 if we're going to consider a level 3 waiver in the future. We could just do the same thing now, because what do we learn in a approval process from completing the level 2? We know what we're going to get out of that program. So either rip the Band-Aid off now, or we can come back and do it again later, but it might just be equally as efficient or more efficient to consider it all now.
So just so I'm clear here, your suggestion is that the prescription do the full level 2. Additionally, these classes that are prescribed as part of what would be the level 3 waiver, and then just once that's all done, they have the crisscross and the blessing.
Correct.
I don't necessarily see it. I mean, that's like you say, it's the same thing. It's just whether or not we come back to review what they did, which all that documentation is going to go to the academy anyways, right, Lindsay, to make sure that they successfully completed all the level 2 stuff.
Correct.
And if there were any issues, how would that work? Let's say there was an issue or a question or a concern. Would that then necessitate it bouncing back to us? I mean, on the part of the academy, if you were like, we're not sure this is what y'all meant.
We could, so 2 ways it could go. If they submitted something and say they didn't complete within the time frame you gave them, it would come back to the waiver subcommittee to review, to say, are you going to accept this for their certification? So it would go that way. Or you could just do a final review to ensure this is what we actually meant. This is the prescription that they fulfilled. This is what they submitted for documentation. And then is this what the waivers, does that satisfy the requirements from the waiver subcommittee?
I'm good with the sheriff's suggestion then, if you want to. I mean, I don't know if we want more discussion or not, but
I like it. I think we've done similar in the past, and I think keeping it the same is helpful.
If we accept them into the waiver process with these stipulations, that permits them to start sitting in on any basic coursework, right? Whereas they may not necessarily have the option until they've completed the level 2 program.
We can make it contingent. Have to complete the level 2 class and then you can sit in, which would give them access to reality is.
I'm okay with him sitting in, because the problem is if we wait, the next level 2 is not until June. And so if we accept them into the waiver process and say, hey, you have all these things to complete, it actually benefits him to do that so that he can grab some of the classes from the 119th that are currently in session. Other than that, he'll have to wait till August to take anything that's only offered in level 3. So
And
I'm
that's what I
okay
was
with
going to say.
that.
As a matter of practicality, half the classes are already over. So it's going to be the August class anyways.
Well, but if we accepted him in today, he could in theory still get into some of the, like, right, if we said you have to do the 3-day sexual assault or sexual violence class, right, that's only offered in the basic, that's upcoming, that's in a few weeks. So he would have access to some of that coursework, which I would be okay with, right, but would not necessarily be able to go and do any patrol until completing that level 2 curriculum. You start getting trainings out of the way, though, which I'm okay with. Because to me, this shows how motivated you're actually going to be. We say you have to complete the level 2 program, but you have access to some of the basic coursework right now. Like, go get some of that done until June, and then come June, you can get your level 2 and start doing some of your court work while continue to work on the rest of your training prescription. I think that works.
What agency?
Probably
Rutland
County
County
Sheriff's.
Rutland County, okay.
So the goal initially was that they were going to use him in the court, and then after whatever amount of time they felt appropriate, was going to start probably using him for some traffic details.
We had talked about in the previous meeting, some of the additionals, classes. You talked about VIN, fingerprint, CSI, 1-day versus 3-day, NCIC, sexual assault, DUI, ICAT. I didn't know if you had a preference on the 1-day versus 3-day on CSI. And then if all those that I mentioned would be part of that 3-day.
I vote 3-day. If we're going to give them a level 3, it should be all the things a level 3. I will say I phrased the level 2 on the basis that this is an already capable person who has stale knowledge.
Mhm.
So we are updating the knowledge to bring them forward to today.
I support that.
And so anything, if it's a question of do we do the level 2 or the level 3, everything goes to level 3 in terms of what the prescription should look like. So if level 2, I'm making this up, level 2 has a 16-hour motor vehicle law class and level 3 has a 24-hour, the prescription should reflect the 24 hours or whatever. I don't know what the prescription looks like. I'm just picking on a course topic, but
Yeah. Well, I would say anything that's offered as the level 2 core curriculum, the 10 days, whatever it is, I'm good with, right? But any of the extra classes, like the basic crime scene or crime scene investigations, right? That's added. So you can do basic for 3 days, or they added for a day. Like, those are the classes where I would say if you can get it in basic, I would want you to go that basic route, because you're going to get, and I know you just threw this out, but you're going to get motor vehicle law and criminal law in the level 2 class, and you're already halfway behind on the basic class. So I would say anything outside that 2-week level 2 program should come from, anything where the time discrepancies are different should come from that basic class. Like fingerprint and VIN, they're going to be the same time frame. But the sexual violence class, that should be a basic class. I don't know if he had proof of DUI previously. The worst case might just be like updating Vermont law. Maybe the data master class.
if you
Trying to
can
think
find a
what else.
data master.
Oh my God. So fun.
Uh-huh. So just for the sake of clarification, I use motor vehicle law as a bad example. Sexual assault would be a better example, or CSI, or those things. As
Yeah, I
Aaron
think
just
anything that's an add-on. I
illustrated.
agree. I think do the level 2. No patrolling or anything until he's completed level 2 with the minimum FTO hours. And then anything extra needs to be equivalent time frame for a basic class.
So as a matter of practice, when we've previously accepted level 3 out of jurisdiction waivers, the person is conferred a provisional level 3 certification. I assume, Lindsay, either on when you file the paperwork or when we make our vote, but regardless of what that date is, we are not doing that.
Correct. So the process right now, they don't actually achieve provisional until they take the law package. So they're accepted as they can start the waiver process. But until they take criminal law, motor vehicle law, and juvenile law, they're not in any certification status. So they're provisional after that, and then whatever they have left to train on is completed.
So we would, by voting for this, we would be supporting a provisional level 3 certification that includes the level 2 class with in-service training with FTO and the prescription that we add on to it, which will be substantial.
Yes. And my other question on the FTO, how many FTO hours would you want?
The level 2
Well,
process.
The level
I
two?
would say they'd
Okay.
have to meet the minimum, yeah.
Yeah, minimum for level 2, just because we can't, there's nothing for level 3, so.
And I forget the hours, but it just increased. So whatever that new increase is.
Yeah.
80, 100, 120, whatever.
Whatever it is, it's fine. I think, yeah.
We doubled what it used to be.
Yeah, it's 120 now and then
Yeah.
80 for the level 1.
So as a matter of process, are we taking up the old motion and do we know the old motion or are we making a new motion?
Maybe we should just make a new motion.
Yeah, I would say
We
new
should-
one.
We should probably vote down the old motion on the basis that nobody probably remembers it.
I make a motion to vote down the old motion.
I'll second that. I don't even remember if we had a motion out there or if it was a motion
We
To
did, but we tabled it.
delay, like, yeah. All right, everybody in favor of voting down the previously tabled motion? We're good on that one. Anybody want
So-
to kick in a new one?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept this candidate into the waiver program with a prescription provided as recommended by the academy and the level 2 program as their waiver.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's through.
What's next?
This would be a review of the waiver subcommittee. Some of this that I submitted is just for awareness. I think the full reconvening of the subcommittee would have more direction after this next council meeting on April 2nd. But just for your information, I submitted, there's a variety of documents. One of it, which is what the current subcommittee has put as their mission, who's on the committee. I've also included the rules as they've been updated and as they relate to the waiver subcommittee. I did an overview of the waiver subcommittee as it was, and then as it could be going forward for 2025 and what it is we'll actually have to do within that subcommittee. And as I said, some of that will be defined in the next council meeting, just if we need to be increasing our subcommittee group, if there's going to be any requirements for attendance, if there'll be monthly meetings or twice a month, or if there'll be more than 5 members and what our quorum will be, things like that. So some of that is just for your awareness, so you know what's coming up to, again, whether or not you have the interest, because the executive director will be reaching out to determine who is interested in continuing on. Also included in the package is, I had reached out to New Hampshire, just, we have a good relationship with them, just on what they do for training, what changes they've had. different processes. So they sent along what they do currently for their OOJ process. We get a lot of random certification applications that are around corrections, federal, general, out of state, totally new people coming in. So they have a specific process that they follow. They kind of take everybody, but it's outlined what it is that they do. Some of that's for review, just for research on whether or not we would want to adopt any of those processes or adjust to make them Vermont specific. I also included the reciprocity handbook. This includes every state and whether or not they have reciprocity and what it is they require for that. We did find out recently, which I thought was interesting and could be part of a discussion, that some states we've found out do not have any sort of decertification process, so they have no professional regulation. Some of that, I think, impacts our OOJ process and just things that we determine going forward in that process, because obviously right now we look through the NDI, but if states don't have a decertification process and they're not part of that professional regulation, there's things that we're going to miss. So is there any caveats that we could put in our process that would kind of try to capture some of that? So that was really the purpose in me submitting all that paperwork to you, is for your review, just certain things to keep in mind. This subcommittee will change purpose and it will become a lot of work. I do anticipate that the attorney, when we get one on board, will be part of the subcommittee too, just to guide some of those processes and things that maybe we don't consider. But one of the biggest things happening right now that we need to define is the those ARIDE certificate ARIDE waiver requests. Part of that, right now I'm collecting them, but because we don't have a process, I have no way of really doing anything beyond that. Just knowing who's actually requesting that waiver. But as a subcommittee, we need to be, let's see, that's part of that. Okay, so in the indefinite waivers, we have to outline circumstances that support the granting of an indefinite waiver. If we are granting an indefinite waiver, we have to inform the officer what circumstances would void an indefinite waiver. So it's the first request. And then the second is to provide the council with an annual report of indefinite waivers granted in the calendar year. So the annual report, I think that could easily be covered by the end of the year, but then determining what circumstances would void an indefinite waiver, so that we can come up with just standard language that we submit back with an indefinite waiver. And if there's any requirements that would that we would say, no, we're not going to accept that as an indefinite waiver, trying to come up with those pathways for the people requesting. So that's the main thing right now. That's time pressing, and the other is just, you know, building out what this process looks like going forward. So for your awareness.
And I know that sounds like a lot, but coming over from the rules committee, the idea was to say, let's give the waiver committee common sense to look at chief so-and-so.
Yeah.
Do they really need ARIDE training? What are they doing? And who applies? And then the flip side being, who applies for an indefinite waiver and tries to sell the Trojan horse, and I don't do patrol, and then 2 weeks later they're a working chief and doing all the things. The part two, and I will call out that I fall into this category. ARIDE training is an intermediary training to DRE training. I was trained as a DRE, but the law would have required me to go back to ARIDE training, which I was capable of teaching as a DRE. So it just was me, and I think one or two other people fell into that. John Flanagan being one of the former ones. He's now the state agency coordinator. So it's just like there's a wonkiness with the law. And then number 3, we said, well, hey, we're doing this for A-RIDE. Are there circumstances where the waiver committee maybe petitioned with, hey, this makes sense? And so we made it, rather than just an A-RIDE specific rule, we made it for all training. We couldn't envision, as a rules committee, we couldn't envision all the times that someone might apply for a waiver, but we wanted to allow the waiver committee to have common sense to look at a circumstance and say, understanding that waivers are to be granted in limited senses, we should give and trust the waiver committee with common sense to apply this. So that was the logic from the rules committee, is to basically say, let's let that committee be smart with its decisions, knowing the makeup of the waiver committee is generally law enforcement only. For the sheer nature of what the training requirement comes with, it doesn't mean that it will always be law enforcement, but it was always predominantly law enforcement. And the goals being common sense should prevail, but we should have sound reasoning and logic to common sense.
So Lindsay, how fast does that language have to be sorted out?
So really, it's already in effect. I have the waivers here that are hanging out, but knowing that like we want to do the process right, I'm in no rush to, we're not saying, hey, you need to take this A-RIDE. I would ideally like, I can even start sending, just so you have an idea, who's actually requesting it. Most of them are agency heads or people who have nothing to do with any patrol work or road work. And then there's some instances where we may want to consider declining, but I can send you those just to review and have an idea of what we're looking at, and then start to build out what that language could look like. I would ideally like it to be finalized before like the last quarter of the year, just so if there is anybody that we decline and they do need to take A-RIDE, we could schedule something that would align with that. So that's what I have for my ideal goal, but also knowing that we want to do it right and not just doing something to get it done. So.
Okay.
If possible, it would be my preference, knowing that there's a lot, if we could have like 3 categories. Academy's recommend of grant, Academy's recommendation of deny, and then the third category being these should be handled on an individualized basis. And just using the story I just shared with me being a former DRE, I would want to be considered as an individual basis because unique to what other agency heads are asking for, but it just it's illogical to provide me a training that is in elementary to the advanced training I've received. But if there's 100 of these to do, I'd like, my personal preference would be, can we just make a motion to approve waivers 1 through 100? And then if somebody wants to appeal that, we could take them into category 3 later.
Is that something though, Lindsay, that there's capacity for on your end? Because how much of a lift is that? I mean, not specifically you, I mean on the academy then.
That's a good question. So I guess it depends what you're looking for as a waiver subcommittee on what you would accept or not accept. Some of that I think is kind of defining that first before we start saying what we would recommend or not. Some of them are like, we can look through their training record and determine, okay, this is who you are, but we don't really have any way of saying like, okay, like these are all employment decisions we never get notified on what they're actually doing and what their function is within that role. So I wouldn't necessarily say that, yes, this means that they do not need this training, where I don't entirely know because I don't know what they're doing within their agency. So it depends on what level of background you'd want to see from each application.
What's been
Or if
submitted
we
so
just-
far? Just names, like requesting, right? Like our agency just sent a slew of names
Right.
based on their position or like ultimately their position, right? Time on and knowing that they're not going to go back into that patrol, which again makes sense to me, right? I'm not looking to waste people's time. If you have, higher ranking executive staff that's not going to go on the road, I do get a little nervous. You get that the chief that comes in or sheriff comes in or whoever, and they're like, no, I'm just here for admin stuff, and then. Right. So how do you track that or how do you hold people accountable? I think that's few and far between. And I totally agree with the sheriff, right? If you can teach a ride, you probably don't need to take it, right? If your level of training supersedes that makes zero sense to say, hey, you have to go take this now.
Yeah,
So
I think
go ahead, Lindsay.
I was just gonna say, with what's submitted, I think you could easily look at it and say yay or nay on
Makes
whether
sense.
you would or you wouldn't. I think where it really comes down to is what voids it. What do you determine? Like, I mean, I imagine it would come through as like a professional regulation complaint if we were to ever identify it, but it may come through as some other way. And what is the process behind that, I guess? And what the language would be of like, here's what voids that, and then here's the process by which that happens.
When I feel like
So-
we're seeing a bunch of that right now because of the change, but I don't know that we're going to see an onslaught of this later. You know what I mean? I think we're just playing
get it,
catch up
yeah.
now of when the 3 years went into effect versus who kind of missed that, right? So I think I think this is the heavy lift, and then it's just maintenance. If you get some out of state jurisdiction or like an admin executive staff member coming in. So, okay.
So, Lindsay, I think the way to frame it would be a more conservative approach of the waivers being granted. What voids it is if you return to patrol as any form of primary function.
Yeah.
It'll be left to the professional regulation committee to determine what a primary function is. But that's where we, again, go back to my category 3 of, okay, Aaron put in for this, I'm using Aaron as an example. Aaron put in for this waiver when she had her job with OPD. She's now returning to St. Albans patrol. Well, it just voided. So whatever language would be appropriate to say that transition to the position is what did it.
Right.
Versus Aaron was on her way home from OPD and stopped a car who was drunk, and she did the right thing, but she didn't take this class. Like, no, her primary duties are at OPD to do what she does at OPD. So the idea was to say we don't want to prevent people from taking enforcement action. We just know they're not going to normally do it. And the last DUI I had, I gave to one of my deputies because he was better at it than I was. So I'd like that's just going to be the reality of what a majority of these waivers that we're receiving will be. And so if we have strict language and then now picking on Travis gets this conservative prescription and he says, I'd like to appeal this and have you evaluate my individualized circumstances. Then he can present his case. That's not work on Lindsay or Academy staff trying to figure out 100 waivers and what everyone's academic training is. And then we just ask the profession to use common sense and saying, you might get a rejection or you might get this, and it's because we're dealing with a batch action. So appeal it, and then we take into consideration your 4 cases that have unique circumstances. My goal is to process these with the least amount of unnecessary labor possible.
Do you want to set up a regular meeting date? As we said, I can submit what ones we have. I think it would be an easy view for all of you, and then It'll be
I gotta
easier to
send you one
say.
too.
Yep.
You have one from me? I might need to as well.
Probably. Yeah, I haven't gotten as many as I thought I would get. I knew I'd get a lot from VSP, but I think a lot of people are not entirely sure whether or not they will or they won't. But then also Vermont law enforcement with shortages, people are doing a lot more than they probably anticipated. So we can start there, and then I think it'll be easy for you to see when you see what I see. If anybody falls within an indefinite exception, I should say, that we would need to review any further than just saying, yes, you get one.
Lindsay, this might, I don't know what words I want to say. I understand you already have these requests. I spoke with the director a couple days or weeks ago who said that a lot of the forms are being reworked to fit with your new system.
Mhm.
Are we using the same waiver request that we have had since like 2015 for these? Are we formulating a new one that might alleviate workload or answer certain questions that we don't know?
Yeah, like you can't really see it because blurry, but it's specific to indefinite waivers.
Okay.
Right now, a lot of those forms will become digital only that gets submitted through the system, but as of right now, there's one specific to indefinite waivers.
Okay.
All right. So next, you want to get like a long-standing meeting date going, and then that way, how this waiver committee continues to evolve, we almost already have it in place. I guess I
Does
go
it
back
make-
and forth. Go ahead.
Does it make sense for us to set a date, not knowing if this is the future makeup of the waiver committee and they might have different availability that makes or breaks meeting?
I think at least for the next foreseeable meeting, just for purposes of warning and the process I take for warning, even if we
Yep.
did it one or two meetings, just to do this piece, just because I don't know what the outcome is going to be on that conversation on the 2nd, and I don't know what the timeline will be for any changes. So even just to get the next couple on, and then we can develop something steady from there once we know more after the meeting on the 2nd.
Are you thinking monthly, Lindsay, or 2 weeks, or what are you thinking?
I think monthly could be fine. And then if it needs to increase, then I think that would follow more in line with whatever happens next with this committee.
Anybody have any days that are a no-go?
Thursday mornings will start getting a little tricky, but it's like the second Thursday of every month, so I can work around. And yeah, I mean, I guess it depends. Is it good to kind of think about planning these after the council meeting if something's come up, or do we think that after the 2nd, it won't maybe necessarily have a huge impact on us? If you did like the first Thursday of every month,
Yep.
does that work?
Are you talking like afternoon though? Or are you saying morning? Sorry. Yeah, I just heard you say mornings were bad, but maybe that's not the first.
So the second Thursday of the month morning would not be beneficial for me. The first right now,
Gotcha.
the first Thursday of the month I can make.
I
Yeah.
can't
I can
make
make that
mornings
work.
Thursday.
Afternoon then?
I can do after 1:30 most of the time.
All right, so let's grab like 2 o'clock on Thursdays.
Yeah, like, what do you think, an hour, 2 or 3, and then,
I'd set it for at least an hour. If it's less than that, we'll get everybody out, and if it's more, if we can stay longer, we'll do it. And if we have to reconvene quickly another day, we'll try to make that happen. And so we'll do that. So first Thursday of every month, 2 to
Our
3
next
o'clock.
meeting will be the 3rd.
Yep.
Look at us being productive today. Okay. What else do you need from us, Lindsay?
I believe that's it for right now. I'll send out a meeting invite right after this, just so you have it. Hopefully nothing changes.
I just put it on my calendar, so it can't.
Yeah. Going in there now. It's too late, Lindsay.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay. Boom. And done. Oh, I'll if I didn't put it in for 2 o'clock in the morning. Okay.
Wait, we were doing 2 in the morning, right?
Yeah, listen, I'll make it happen. Sometimes it's the only time things get done. All right, so we're good with the review. We're good with the OOJ. Anything else? Anybody has a dying passion to talk about? I can't see any members of the public on the meeting. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move.
Stop laughing at me,
Seconded.
Lindsay. Motion seconded. All in favor? Thanks for your help,
See y'all.
everybody.
Thank
See
you.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Later all.